Hello, today we will be looking at finding the equation of a circle. So today's topic will bring in various concepts that we have looked at before, which I will link below in the description. But this includes the distance formula involving points on a coordinate plane, as well as completing the square. If you do not understand the distance formula and or completing the square, please review those before moving forward with this video, because if you understand both of those concepts and topics, the two examples that I will be presenting today will make a lot of sense. If we look at the diagram that we have drawn here, we see that we have a point C with the coordinates h and k to the point P with the coordinate x and y. We see that P and C is equal to the distance. We see that R is equal to the distance of C and P. If we wanted to represent that, then we can use the standard distance formula, the square root of 0.1. In this case, we'll choose P as 0.1. So we'll take X and then minus P2 or 0.2. In this case, it's H squared plus, and then we have Y minus K squared. And this is equal to R, which is the distance. What we can see is the distance from point C to the point on the circle is considered the radius. And that distance can be expressed using the distance formula. And for that, we get that equal to R. If we take out the square root, then we're left with x minus h squared plus y minus k squared, which is equal to r squared, because we just square both sides by r. And this right here is the standard equation for the circle with the center of h and k with a radius of r. If we had a circle that had a center point at the origin, and you'll have to excuse my circles, and we have a distance of r, then h and k would be 0. If this is h and k, that would be 0, and therefore your equation would transform into x squared plus y squared equals r squared. And this is the equation for a circle with radius r with the center at the origin. If the distance between the center at the origin and P, your point, if that distance is equal to 1, therefore r is equal to 1, then this would be considered a unit circle, because everything would be a distance of 1 from that center point. As you know, the radius of a circle never changes, and therefore the distance formula that we're using that is equal to r never changes as well. It stays consistent through the whole circle, and the only thing that changes around the circle are your x and your y coordinates. The center will stay the same. The radius, or the distance between your center and your point, will stay the same. However, the location of your point will change, and that's all we're looking at. Now that we understand the basic standard equation for a circle, let's look at a couple of examples. So the question is, if your center point is -2, 3, and your circle has a point that contains 4, 5, what is the equation of the circle? Okay, if we wanted to graph this out just to see what it would look like, -2, 3 is our center point, and we have a point that is 4, 5. So this is 3, this is -2, this is 4, and this is 5. So that's your distance, and this would be your circle. Now it's a pretty bad circle, but you guys understand. What we need to do here is find the distance between point C and our point that they're given at P1. We know that that's equal to R. So we take the square root of x1, which is -2, minus our center point, 4 squared plus y2, 3 minus 5 squared. And this is equal to r. All we need to do is solve for r. We simplify. We take the square root. We have negative 2 minus 4, which is negative 6. And that value squared, plus 3 minus 5, which is negative 2. And we square that, and that's equal to r. We have 6 times 6, which is 36, plus 2 times 2, which is 4. And that, take the square root of that, equal to r. We have 40 square root is equal to r. 40 can be broken down into 4 times the square root of 10 equal to r. That is equal to plus or minus 2 square roots of 10, which is equal to r. Now, we cannot have a negative distance, therefore we know that this is really equal to 2 square roots of 10, which is equal to r. Now, this is our radius. The question asks to find the equation of the circle. Now that we have both our center point and our radius, we can put that into our standard equation for a circle. We would have x minus a negative 2, so it's plus 2 squared, plus we take y minus 3 squared, which is equal to 2 square roots of 10 squared. Because we know that 2 square roots of 10 squared is equal to the square root of 40, we can simplify this down to our final answer and get x plus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 40. And this is our final answer. And this is the equation of the circle at the center point, negative 2, 3, with a radius that contains the point 4, 5. Let's look at another example. Okay, in our next example, we have 3x squared plus 3y squared minus 12x plus 18y equals 9. So similar to the distance formula, if you are not familiar with completing the square, please click on the video and the link in the description below so you can get an understanding on how to complete the square and what that is. There's a full thorough explanation of that, and that will make this problem a lot easier. Now, completing the square will allow us to manipulate the equation so we can obtain the standard equation of a circle. We are using things that we've learned previously to help us solve and identify the equation of a circle. And the question is, find the center and radius of the circle. If you are given an equation and asked to solve for the center point and or the radius, then completing the square will allow you to do that. So let's look at this example. So the center and radius of the circle. So this one's a little tricky. We know that the standard equation of a circle is x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared. Square root of that is equal to r. Getting rid of the square root, we're left with x1 minus x2 squared plus y1 minus y2 squared equals r squared. And this x2 could be the same as h, and the y2 could be k. It doesn't matter. They are just variables and they represent the exact same thing. But looking at this equation, why don't we try to match the initial equation that we have to this equation here, completing the square? Then this should be relatively simple. To do this, let's get it into the form that is congruent with completing the square. So we have 3x squared minus 12x, and then we have the 3y squared plus the 18y, and this is equal to 9. To complete the square, what we first need to do is we need to ensure that the coefficients in front of the x squared and the y squared are both 1. So what we can do, we see that we have a common denominator of 3, and so we'll divide everything by 3, and we are left with x squared minus 4x. We are left with y squared plus 6y. And this is equal to 3. Okay, now what we need to do is complete the square. How do we make this a complete square? We know by factoring a negative 2 plus a negative 2 is going to give us this negative 4. A negative 2 times a negative 2 is 4, so that means we need to add 4 to the other side. So if we have x minus 2 squared, this is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 4. And therefore, we need to add the 4 to the other side. Similarly, we can do the same thing over here to the y side. What plus what gives you 6? Well, 3 plus 3 gives you 6. So if we do y and 3, and it's a positive squared, then this will break down to y squared plus 6y plus 9. So we also need to add a 9 to the other side. When we simplify, we are left with x minus 2 squared plus y plus 3 squared equals, adding these values up, 16. From this equation, we know that we have our centered and we have our radius. So using our simplified version of our standard equation for a circle, all we need to do is break out the components. We know that the center of the circle is located here and here, and we also know that r is going to be equal to the square root value of this. Well, we have a negative here, we have a negative here, so we know that the center is going to be equal to 2, and we have a negative here, but we have a positive here, so we know that this value is going to be a negative 3, and this is going to be equal to our center. And then for our r value, we need to take the square root, because we are at r squared right now, so we need to take the square root of 16, and that is going to be r squared equals 16. Therefore, r is equal to 4 when we take the square root of both sides. And this is our answer. All right, and I think that pretty much sums it up. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. If you learned anything, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.